Them, the Scare lacked the geek factor of the first season and didn't pull me in like I wanted, but by the end, I really felt hooked to this series and would really look forward to a third season. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for Them, the Scare says, LAPD Detective Dawn Reeves is assigned to a new case, a murder that has left the most hardened detectives shaken. As Dawn draws closer to the truth, something malevolent grips her and her family. All right, so it's not often I review an entire season instead of just the premiere of a show, but the first season, simply titled Them, really took off in interesting ways late in the season. So I took the rare opportunity that I had this week to watch and review the entire second season titled Them, the Scare. There's zero connection to the first season until the final minutes of the last episode, after really the main plot has been resolved. I recommend watching this without watching season one, but by the end, you might want to go back and watch sort of as a prequel experience. Them is an anthology series in the sense of having self-contained seasons. So it's not like, even though you might hear it called an anthology, that's really what's meant by that. Season 1 took place in the early 50s, Season 2 in the early 90s. Season 1 was a family drama with strong themes of racism. Season 2 is mostly a serial killer crime drama with racism as a recurring but less central issue. Now, I really wanted more supernatural in Season 1 throughout that season. And I got even less of it in Season 2, which was very disappointing. However, in some ways, this made the supernatural elements more realistic. As I have heard more accounts of demonic oppression from those close to such situations in my church's leadership in recent years, a constant challenge is discerning what problems are psychological and what problems are spiritual, or what problems are both. There are times when Christians are too quick to assume demonic activity, and times when psychologists and therapists give up, and the church brings relief through spiritual intervention. The overlap between the psychological, chemical, and spiritual is a real challenge we have to consider as Christians with both humility and careful discernment. In Them, the Scare, apart from the recurring supernatural nature of the murders, problems are often emotional and psychological, but by the end, the supernatural very clearly and strongly rears its head. I still would have preferred it come earlier, though. By the way, if you'd like more overt kinds of horror, then you can get my audio drama adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's From Beyond at spiritblade.com, or for just $1 at patreon.com/spiritblade productions, along with a ton more exclusive content. Anyway, back to Them, though. As with any crime drama, Them, the Scare has drama from arguments and tension from the suspense of people dealing with this situation and creeping into places where the murderer might be there, those kinds of things. I was feeling very little of this while watching, although perhaps because I was preoccupied with curiosity about where the season was going to go, both in terms of its supernatural elements and thematically speaking. It thankfully had more focus on a smaller number of characters than Season 1, and was dealing with probably fewer themes as well and plot threads, mostly centering here on Dawn Reeve and the killer she is tracking down. There are some great shocking turns beginning in episode 5, and the reveals at the end made it feel like a worthwhile investment for me. But even with relatively short episode run times and fewer episodes than Season 1, I feel like this story could have maybe been told better in 6 to 7 episodes. As far as the cast, Deborah Ayorinde, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the only returning cast member of Season 1, and she plays a totally different character here. But I did appreciate the meta-level continuity of having her back, and I find her to be an engaging performer. So at this point, I'm kind of hoping that she'll be the main if there's a Season 3. The rest of the cast, though, is all solid. I have no complaints. I also don't think the show is particularly raising the bar when it comes to its acting. It's just solid and does what it needs to do. As far as the stunts and visuals, well, first, just the visuals in general. This is a recreation of early 90s urban California that I really appreciated. The cars, the clothes, the hairstyles, they're all less striking to me, I think, than those things would be in previous decades, like the 50s through the 80s or whatever, but it all still felt familiar in a weird way, and something about the particular way that Dawn Reeves' hair was braided I don't know, just made me feel comfy, which is probably some sort of middle-aged man nostalgia. Visual effects are somewhat sparse. Even the supernatural elements are often practical or done with a very stylized form of editing, but that fits well with the psychological crime drama setting, so I didn't feel, like it was necessarily lacking. But of course, as a geek, I wish there was more supernatural stuff going on to look at. As far as themes, okay. Yeah, I think that demonic oppression, or just the more common temptation to sin, could certainly be themes that we could find ourselves reflecting on after watching this. We are most likely to give in to temptation, to sin, or in more rare cases, some kind of demonic oppression when we're experiencing difficulty or suffering. But the cautionary warning, I think, in Them the Scare is to not let the evils inflicted on us tempt us to give in to evils ourselves, whether in the form of common temptation or the more rare instance of overt demonic influence. Ephesians 4:26 and 27 even recognizes that when we are reacting in anger to something, and anger is almost always because we or someone we care about has been wronged, it says, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. And it's in that context that we get the warning, and give no opportunity to the devil. I think some other translations will say, give no foothold to the devil. There's just an opportunity there that both our sinful tendencies that are just kind of part of us, but then also that Satan and his allies can take advantage of when we are being wronged. And I think that's really important to be aware of. Another thing that wasn't necessarily a theme, but something I really appreciated thematically speaking, is the idea of marriage reconciliation. This is just a minor spoiler, I suppose, but there's the happy ending that is presented to us in this family that is split hints at the possibility of reconciliation between a couple that has been divorced. And I think for so long, starting with Mrs. Doubtfire, I always remember that movie as kind of like the first time I really noticed this. The bar has been lowered in terms of what constitutes a happy ending when there is friction or divorce in a marriage. That starting with Mrs. Doubtfire and so many movies after that, we've been told to accept as a good enough happy ending divorce and separation, and it is true that many people are going to have to live with that. Many people do. And so it's not that I don't think there's no place for stories to try and give us a version of a happy ending that suggests, we can continue to move on in life even when we're dealing with divorce. However, I think that the idea of reconciliation in marriages that are separated or divorced in fiction, them reconciling, coming back together, those are far too rare. I think that is a beautiful thing that fiction can present to us as something to aspire to, and to not be willing to settle for less unless there is absolutely no ability to reconcile. So to see that as something to aspire to, and part of the defining characteristics of the happy ending, happy ending-ish, I'll leave it at that, was still, it was a good thing to see. All right, I have no idea what your tastes are in TV shows, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, watch this one, because you'll be glad you did by the end. But do it while you're exercising or on a second screen while you're gaming. A number of the episodes, it's just going to be like, it's a crime drama. You're not always in the mood for that. In fact, you're mostly in the mood for nerd stuff, So this is not your normal type of show that you would go to, but thematically, it's so interesting. And by the end, you're going to be invested and waiting for season 3. So worth your time in one way or another. This one is rated TVMA for violence, foul language, and sexual content. And those are all of my thoughts for now on Them the Scare. As always, I would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making so much of my content possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining at patreon.com/Spirit Productions. Then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Horrible beyond conception. was the change which had taken place in my best friend, Crawford Tillinghast. I had indeed warned him 10 weeks before when he burst forth with his tale of what he felt himself about to discover. I have always believed that such strange, inaccessible worlds exist at our very elbows, and now I believe I have found a way to break down the barriers. We entered the laboratory in the attic, and I observed that detestable electrical machine, glowing with a sickly, sinister, violet luminosity. Listen to me. The waves from that thing are waking 1,000 sleeping senses in us. During the interval that Tillinghast was silent, I fancied myself in some vast and incredible temple of long-dead gods. Some vague edifice of innumerable black stone columns reaching up from a floor of damp slabs to a cloudy height beyond the range of my vision. The picture was very vivid for a while, but gradually gave way to a more horrible conception. Then from the farthermost regions of remoteness, the sound softly glided into existence. It was infinitely faint, subtly vibrant, and unmistakably musical, but held a quality of surpassing wildness, which made its impact feel like a delicate torture of my whole body. Don't move, he cautioned, for in these rays we are able to be seen as well as to see. Remember, we're dealing with a hideous world in which we are practically helpless. Keep still. Indescribable shapes, both alive and otherwise, were mixed in disgusting disarray, and close to every known thing were whole worlds of alien, unknown entities. Foremost among the living objects were great, inky, jellyish monstrosities which flabbily quivered in harmony with the vibrations from the machine. They were present in loathsome profusion, and I saw to my horror that they overlapped, that they were semi-fluid and capable of passing through one another and through what we know as solids. These things were never still, but seemed ever floating about with some malignant purpose. You see them? You see them? You see the things that float and flop about you and through you every moment of your life? What swept up the servants? What made them scream so loud? Don't know? You'll know soon enough. Look at me. Listen to what I say. Do you suppose there are really any such things as time and magnitude? Do you fancy there are such things as form or matter? I tell you, I have struck depths that your little brain can't picture. I have seen beyond the bounds of infinity and drawn down demons from the stars. I have harnessed the shadows that stride from world to sow death and madness. Space belongs to me, do you hear?